Hi, Millie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm very glad to have you on this call today, because I don't actually know much about your journey to or through IEA. So I'm excited to kind of talk through your story. And I want to start, I guess, at the beginning of how did you hear about IEA and what piqued your interest? Like, what was that little string that kind of pulled you in when you heard about it?
So I have been in Emily's world for, I guess, almost 4 years now. And I came across her when I was newly starting my business. I am an intuitive coach and energy healer, specializing in emotion code and body code. And so I already had a modality that I was using. But I loved Emily's energy. And so I've been in kind of her world for a while. And so when she started talking about the certification, it really perked my ears because one of the things I noticed is I wanted to sign more clients, but I just couldn't figure out what was getting in the way for me being able to do that. I felt like I was doing everything I possibly could. And she said something about like how really like one of the things is it's an internal thing. Like you're not taking care of your energy enough. And I saw her talk and launch this IEA experience and certification with her first round. I was like, I really want to do this, but I'm like, I don't know. I already have a certification. I don't know. So I sat on it for that first round and I didn't jump in. And then when the second round came up and I was hearing about all the other IEA students and everything, I was like, you know what? I really think this is time for me. And so like everything, that hesitation of like, I don't know. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to trust this. I can remember I was at a birthday party that my son was invited to at Chuck E. Cheese. And I literally like told my husband, I'm like, hold on a second. And I ran back into the car and like purchased and jumped into the program. I'm just so grateful I did because it's now been a year since I've been certified. And one thing I've learned in my journey is there's always a reason for everything. And if you go into things with that, even when maybe things feel hard, like you end up coming through it with something, some kind of growth, some kind of lesson or whatever. And so that's kind of how I first got started with IEA.
I guess where I should have started is like, oh, hi, Millie, introduce yourself. What do you do? Because you did say, you were launching a business when you found Emily, and I know from knowing you a little bit, that's evolved some.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us kind of where you were at, like as you started this certification, like what modalities or what certifications you had, and then kind of where you're at now and what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I started out as a emotion code and body code practitioner, which emotion code and body code is a form of energy work where we identify trapped emotions, blocks, misalignments, and things using muscle testing. And so I felt very, I don't know if the right word is safe, but it felt very like logical to me. I'm like, okay, like I'm muscle testing, like, not so much leaning on my intuition. But what I learned through as I kind of evolved through the IEA certification is how much my intuition was actually guiding me and supporting me, even through my original modality and certification as well. So I got certified in that in 2019, December 2019, literally before everything shut down. And I took a pause with that thinking, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. I kind of got my bearings and I started really building my business out of that 2020 pandemic era.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and I kind of limped along through it with a lot of my own fears and insecurities about whether or not I was capable of doing this. How can I be a healer? Like, am I making a transformation? Can I provide my, clients with the results that they're wanting? And a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of self-sabotage. And I kind of gimped along that for a good year and a half, 2 years. And I added a few additional modality of EFT tapping. So I'm also certified in EFT tapping and started incorporating that as well. But I really was like, I want to take my business seriously. I really want to make sure that I can expand and create a firm foundation in what I want. And so I was like, you know what? I want to dive more into my intuition and trusting myself and my ability. And that's really why I was called to IA. So today now, not only do I work with one-on-one clients, I primarily focus around millennial moms. So my calling and heart, because that's how I
That's
got into this work, was my own journey with anxiety and depression and overwhelm, is to really help support the modern mother who is navigating all the things and juggling all the things and learning how to prioritize their well-being, but also to implement that generational healing so that they can do the healing so that it has a ripple effect across, future generations to come.
Yeah, I'm curious, did you have that mission like when you first started launching? Is that the group of women, like the group of women, millennial moms, or did you find that through the IAA certification process?
I think it definitely refined through the IEA certification. Everything through the certification just got a lot more crystal clear. It's like it refined. Prior to that, I knew I wanted to help women. That was my primarily target, but I definitely, and I knew I wanted moms, but really like my mission before I was like, okay, like I want to help you with your mom anger and self-care. And it felt very safe and kind of, I don't know, like lower level. And after IEA, I feel like I really stepped into this role of like, no, like, let's do this deep healing that's going to have a lasting impact for you. And it's more about connecting within yourself into your own unique frequency and vibration. And really, because we all moms say we lost ourselves in motherhood, right? And so my mission is really helping them of, you didn't lose her. She's just been a little dormant. And so let's awaken her and let's reignite her and let's clear out those blocks and things to help support you so that you can still feel connected to her, even while navigating everybody else.
Yeah, and I really love that mission as a millennial mom myself. I didn't know other people felt that way, like, oh, I just totally lost myself into momming, but I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
And I feel like I could probably talk to you about that all day, but listening to you speak about kind of the way you found IEA, what drew you to it, it's for you, it seems like it was the energy and the business, which is funny because talking to a couple other practitioners, it's like one or the other, really. And so it's kind of interesting that you were like, oh, I know that I'd like to, connect deeper to my intuition. And then also the part of, like growing my clientele. So is that what it was like? Did you feel drawn to both? Did it feel like this program is the blend of the two that I need? Can you talk a little bit about
Yeah,
that?
I think at first my logic brain was, of course, it's like, okay, like I need the strategies, I need all the things. That's the problem. That's why it's not working. And so I think at the beginning, logically, like that's what I was thinking, but I could feel this tug. Like I said, Emily, I'll never forget it in one of her, I don't know, was it Instagram Live or it was a Zoom informational meeting or training she was doing. And she said something along the lines of like, the reason why you're not expanding your business and getting more clients is because your energy capacity is not there. And so like I felt this tug and realized that like I was not taking care of even though I'm an energy medicine practitioner, right? And I do energy healings regularly on myself, but I still was not maintaining my energy well enough to be able to hold that container. And so I do think it was kind of both for me, even though I felt more heavy on like the business, I wanted the strategy. And what I can say through the whole entire experience, that the strategy, while it's very much intertwined, I feel like the majority of my growth was with the energy and blocks and things that I was working through, the imposter syndrome, the self-sabotage, all those different things. And because of course, Emily's there lovingly nudging you,
Yeah.
politely holding a mirror up and being like, look, okay, like let's really look at what the problem is instead of all these other excuses that you're kind of giving.
Yeah.
So
Um, I'm wondering if you felt, I know there was a tug and you kind of waited till like the last minute at a Chuck E. Cheese party to run out and sign up. So what was the block or the hesitation for you that came up, and how did you work through that?
I mean, I think like many of us, it was finances. I have invested quite a bit of money in a variety of business coaching, certifications, all these different things. And like I said, I have learned that I've always gained something out of them, but sometimes you feel like you don't necessarily get what you're hoping out of it. And also just the fact that financially where we're at, I'm like, how can I invest this kind of money when my business isn't even making the revenue that I'm wanting to? But I think what really also helped me pull that trigger, one of the things that helped me put, is the thing that, I mean, she does have revenue available for us to make in this certification. And I think that's all part of it, is these money blocks and these resistance. And, I'm not saying nobody go into debt or make
Mm.
unhealthy financial choices, but sometimes you do have to take a leap of faith.
Yeah,
And I can attest, even, and this has happened multiple times when I've done a variety of things with Emily, is like within a week, I'll have unexpected money come in. And that happened. I signed a client, a $1,500 client, within the matter of weeks of signing up for IEA. And I was like, oh, okay, like here we go. And so I think that it's really important to sit with this, like the decision, because like I tell so many of my clients, you cannot tell like your body doesn't know the difference between fear or excitement. So it creates the same visceral response in your body.
yeah,
And you need to kind of check in with yourself and say, like, is this fear based, or is this really like a hard, like not aligned with you?
yeah,
And because for me, everything else was like spot on and felt great. And the only thing that was holding me up was the finances.
yeah,
And so, I chose to look at my finances, be a little creative of what I did. And then also everything that I made within IEA, I applied towards that. And even now with what I'm making in my business, I raised my rates. I, gained that confidence. And so really, like, there is that return on investment, both
yeah.
the tangible and then also the kind of the priceless aspect of it too.
And what you were saying too about fear, Emily and I have talked a little bit about that fear is also okay. Like it's okay to do things in fear. Certain things, of course, nothing crazy. But as you're growing up, everything you do is in fear. It's always the first time, and oftentimes those are the best experiences. And um, I know Emily outside of work because of our kids doing karate together, and she knows that I do kickboxing, and I went up for my black belt, which was scary. I didn't have to do that. I had a huge fear of all of it. And then as I went through it, and I knew I had to like um, show up in front of people and do a ceremony and show something off, and I was like, I'm here. I'm doing a boot camp every week. I'm going up for my black belt. I'm gonna do the scariest thing to me, which is a board breaking sequence. Uh, like I'm gonna just go full on into my fear because I know that's what this experience is like here for me, and I'm gonna break through it and I'm gonna feel better on the other end. So talking a little bit about like fear and excitement, I do think it's okay to like do something from that place and just like barge through. Um I just that like just came up for me when you said that, because I'm like, everybody talks so much about fear, but like as adults, we don't think about how we used to do that all the time. Um,
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's exactly that. Like fear has a time and place, right? It was instinctively built in us. But I think really, like, it's always going to feel a bit scary. It's always going to feel a bit fearful if it's something new and unknown, right? And, you know, worrying about the future leads into anxiety. And so it's like that anxiety of the anticipation of not knowing how it's all going to turn out.
Yep, yep.
But if you hold the faith, right? Like I pulled Emily's card the other day, like, the fear over faith, or, hold the faith. And it's this exactly that of, if you just hold the faith, you're gonna gain something out of it. And even if it doesn't turn out the way you thought it was going to turn out, there's still little nuggets of
Yeah.
gold out it. And it's your life experience. That's what you were meant to experience. So
Yep. And so you mentioned that you had other modalities and you have done other certifications. Could you talk to like I don't know how long ago you went through some of those. I know it's been a while since IEA, but um could you compare a little bit, like going through the certification processes of IEA versus your other certifications?
yeah, so my first certifications, they were all online based. So really it was pre-recorded videos that then required me to go through the curriculum, right? Do some quizzes, and then I had a certain number of hours, just like IEA, where I had to work with clients. And I was assigned a like an advisor who would check in with me every once in a while. So I felt it was very like hands off. It was up to me to pace. It was up to me to figure out, I could ask questions and things, but I was really reliant on the curriculum and things. That there wasn't really what Emily provided, which I really enjoyed having, not only the curriculum, which she has, right, in the back end of your, back office of Kajabi, but you had also your calls for you to be able to ask questions, connect with her. And so it was really nice having those two aspects. I think the other thing that I really appreciated about IEA was the fact that, um, if we were having blocks, it wasn't like it was just go fend for yourself. Like Emily, of course, is her intuition. She would pick it up as soon as like we would all get on the call, and she'd be like, hold on.
Yeah.
Like waiting to like do something or redirect here. And so just having that kind of support intertwined with that. So it's like you got the business aspect, you got the certification aspect, you got the spiritual aspects, and you also got access to Emily's intuition and healing of being able to help you begin to shift out of your blocks and things like that.
I don't know how, if this was part of your cohort, but we now have integration calls.
Oh,
So we have like 4 integration calls, and those are specifically for energy healing. So Jamie does those. And because we from seeing other cohorts, like, oh, this is needed.
right.
Um, yeah, and we don't want to just say like you're on your own. No, we want to like support people through the
Yeah.
process. So we have integration calls now. I think there's 4 of them, and it's all about coming and talking about like, oh, this is coming up, and then getting energy healing.
Yeah.
Because like we noticed that that was a huge need through the other cohorts.
Yeah, and I
Uh,
think that's really important. And I think another aspect too was just like the cohorts itself. Like I met women in there who have since become friends, and we kind of supported each other through the process and would check in with each other, like, how are you doing? We would practice with each other. And that was a really nice aspect versus, again, feeling like you're just kind of on your own little island, like trying to get through stuff. In fact, with my other certification that I was mentioning, that was just kind of you're on your own, I actually asked for an extension because I was behind the scenes working through like my own insecurities and things like that. And I was like, I can't do this. And then I asked for an extension from the deadline of when we needed to complete, our hours of with clinic, basically with clients. So
yeah. I mean, I have so many questions, but I'm like, especially not knowing your story, I'm like, oh, I could like talk to you all day about this. Um, but I'm really curious because you already had kind of launched your business and you had other modalities. When it came to doing your practice sessions. How did you go about getting those clients? Like, were you scared? Was that a block for you? Or because you were already like, starting a business, um, having already worked with clients, was it easy, hard? Like, how did it make you feel? And then how did you go about getting those people to fill your practice sessions?
I think first of all, I need to put the caveat. Of course, I had resistance with stuff. Like, I don't want anybody to think that just because I had already been like doing some work early on that I wasn't hitting up against any blocks or anything of resistance of getting the times done or anything like that or reaching out. At the beginning for the free stuff, I reached out to, of course, my client base, my friends, my family, my Instagram. And when they were free for the most part, like I was able to get them pretty full. Um, and the only resistance at that time I kind of felt was, of course, it was a new modality. And I think the other thing, like I said at the beginning, my other modalities, I felt a lot more like scientific, not as woo. I mean, even though it is woo energy work, but it felt more, I guess, tangible for the logic mind to wrap their head around. People who have done other holistic modalities, chiropractic, things like that, whether it's tapping or emotion code. And so this kind of took me a next level into my spiritual journey per se, and expanding those gifts of clairvoyance and like all those intuition and all those different things. And so that's where I started feeling some resistance of like, who's going to sign up for this? Is this going to be too weird for them? But I was able to do that. And then I really worked around like, hey, if you know anybody that would be interested in this, like send them my way. So that's kind of how I built also my practices through referrals. And so that is really how I started getting those. I definitely hit some walls when we started charging, me personally, but also sometimes people, it's like, oh, it's not free anymore. you know and I mean, and even though we were charging only like $33 US dollars at the beginning, um I noticed that I dragged a little bit more on my motivation to get them filled because there were some blocks, and then not as many people would like snag them up. So that's where I think the work really started. And there were some months where I was behind even on the number of sessions that needed to get done. And then I had to double up on the next month. But I am one person who usually, when I invest in something like this or I sign up for something like this, like there isn't room for not seeing it all the way through. Um, Even though I did have stuff come up and I was like, I don't even know how this is gonna all pan out or if I'm gonna be able to complete it kind of thing. But like I said, like I was like, no, we're gonna see this done. I need that little certification. and and why not? Because it has changed how I even structure my sessions with my clients now. I feel like just like it's integrative energy, work. And I have blended now all of my modalities to create basically my own unique style and method. And to the point where clients who have been with me from the beginning, they're like, I love how things have changed. Like it feels deeper and it feels more impactful and all these different things. And the things that you say, it's like you're inside my head. So it's really has made a huge impact in how my sessions go and even the impact on my clients. So
Yeah, I've noticed you mentioned like a few times about blending IEA. And I do see that come up a lot with people saying like, well, I don't know how I would use this with this other thing that I do. Did you think that when you started, or it kind of sounds like you were like, oh, this seems like it would fit in perfectly.
yeah.
So can you talk, I know you already talked about it, but
Yeah.
the process of blending, was it seamless? Was that a block for you, or was that something that felt like it was perfect? Tell me a little bit more about that.
I would not say it was seamless. Like I very much, and I even had this prior to IEA with my other certifications. It's like I had containers, like each of them were in container. And even when I was trying to figure out how do I talk about who I am and what I do I say I'm an emotion code, body code, practitioner? Do I say I'm an EFT practitioner? I had everything in these bins. And I would say very much for a long time, even after I graduated IEA with my certification, I just was having a hard time wrapping my head around like, how does this all fit together? And it was when I actually let go of like the control of how it needed to look and feel and realized I was already blending them in. Because, like, for example, my emotion code, body code sessions, before I would always do like a silent little like grounding and a little prayer to get connected to them. I began incorporating that in just like Emily does out loud with my session with them. And also versus just going through the motions, like I would connect more with my clients. Um, so I've noticed that I started blending that in. Sometimes now it's tapping along with what's being channeled. So I finally was like, you know what, it is just what it is. I'm an integrative energy practitioner, and that's okay. It
It
doesn't
sounds
matter
like you were
how.
blending it and you were just mentally thinking of it as separate, but you were doing
Exactly.
it all together.
Yeah.
That's really funny. Is like sometimes we just have to get out of our own way and
I just need to get out of my head.
yeah.
And I think the other thing too is a lot of times as a practitioner, we think our people need to know how we're doing it. We're the specialists. They're not the specialists. I mean, you may have the ones who really want a firm understanding, and that's fine, but they really don't care how you're going to do it as long as it's going to get them the results. And I think that's when I started leaning more into of, oh, you have mom guilt. Let's clear your mom guilt blocks, oh, are there trapped emotions that are associated? Okay, we'll clear those out, not necessarily knowing how to do it, but
Right.
going that way. So
Yeah. Not explaining the tools, but just the transformation.
yeah.
I don't know how many times I've heard Emily say.
Which is something I learned from her. But part of it is, I think it's again trusting yourself
Yeah.
and knowing that you are able to offer that transformation. And like I said, it took me a little while of blending it, not realizing I was blending it, to finally be like, okay, we're gonna like get rid of these little buckets and bins that I've put everything in and shake it all up, and it is just what it is.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious to know, did you use social media to get clients or put yourself out there um, before or during IEA?
I did, and I would say I was on social prior to that, but
Okay.
as far as like doing reels and talking on my stories, I was pretty comfortable doing that. So a lot of that I was pitching myself in my stories and offering. But one thing I have continually struggled with is going live. And for some reason, there's just been some blocks around it, feeling like I need to be polished and have a script and all those different things. And there was actually one coaching call on IEA where they're like, well, where do you feel some sticking points? And I'm like, I really haven't, I mean, for a long time, like Spirit's been saying, like, you need to be on Instagram lives, like more and talk about your stuff. And I'm like, I can't do it. And part of that too is like, you need to do a live energy clearing on Instagram. I'm like, I can't do that. What are people gonna think? And so there was a coaching call in IEA, and people were like, well, is there anything that you're feeling like you need to be doing that you're not doing? And I was like, yeah, doing a live. And per Emily's style, she's like, all right, let's put a deadline. When are you going to do it? And I said, well, I guess I could do it when we get off the call. Okay, great. Who's going to join her and so everybody kind of rallied behind me. And sure enough, I got off our call, and within 15 minutes, I got back on Instagram Live and did a live card pull. Again, going back to fear, it was scary and I had a bunch of fear, but it felt so good afterwards. And to this day, still, when I do lives like that, all of my audience are like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I love it. keep doing it. And I have since gone on and done energy clearings on my Instagram as well and made sales from it. So I think, again, if we can get out of our own way.
Yeah. That reminds me of, kind of my favorite thing about IEA as someone who um has seen multiple cohorts and is on the like administrative side. My favorite thing is really seeing the sisterhoods, the connections that are made. Like you said, I remember hearing this story either from someone in your cohort or from Emily herself, like that you did this and everyone went on the live to support you. And the amount of support that just come from the other women in the cohort, seeing that and seeing the friendships that are made and how you're all there for each other, that is like literally my favorite thing to see through the program. And you, like you said, you made lasting friendships and that really like, it's what it's all about. I mean,
Yeah.
that makes me so happy. So I'm wondering if there was something that you took from IEA personally and professionally that still sticks with you, something that stuck with you or just like lit you up when you went through it, or the part that you got the most growth from, just kind of anything from both like the energy aspect and the business side. If you had to pick like one thing from each, what would you say stuck with you?
Well, like I said, almost instantaneously, I realized the necessity to be clearing my energy more. Um, I was clearing my energy, but was I really clearing my energy regularly? So I think that was the biggest thing, was realizing how much I needed to care for myself. And I think one of the things out of it is the fact that actually taking care of me is taking care of my business.
Yeah.
And seeing that correlation of the fact of, oh, if I'm actually prioritizing my stillness practice, moving my body, grounding, clearing my energy before and after sessions, like that capacity of what I had really expanded. And so I think that is something, I really took with that, and making sure that I prioritize and make space for that um is important, and things like that. So
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
yeah.
And was there something from the business training that really helped you along your way, or something that you kind of go back to?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing as far as the business end, which it's hard to not like correlate like the other aspect of it because it's all kind of interconnected, is just
Yes.
even like raising my rates and holding to that value and kind of sticking to that integrity. Because I can remember when we were going over like revenue goals and things like that, and like past things, they're like, okay, like what did you make? How many did you sell? And I realized my pricing was all over the place because I kept discounting myself. And it was really hard for me to actually be like, oh, okay, like here's how many I sold, because they were all at like different prices and things. And so when it came to like forecasting and things, it made it a bit challenging. So I think part of that too, which I know Emily talks a lot about, is a lot of times I was ignoring the numbers. I was ignoring kind of that back end. I was just feeling like I needed to get more people. So I would discount myself. But actually, when you begin to look at the numbers and forecast and plan and set these goals and hold yourself accountable, that you actually will propel in your business. And so I think that's something that I continually hear Emily in the back of my head, of like, what's the data? Like, what are you doing? What's working? What's not working? And to being able to have that consistency so you can begin to see patterns.
Yeah, and totally, and it helps you plan. It helps with so much.
Yeah.
Um, we chatted about the financial commitment, um, committing as a person who just wants to see things through. I'm wondering the time commitment of 6 months. Um, how did that feel to you? I know you are a mom, you have kids. And like you said, you were already starting, like had a business. So how did you make time for the calls and committing to that 6 month time frame?
I mean, I treated it like my hair appointments, like it's scheduled, you work everything else around it, right? As women, we never want to miss our hair appointments. So really like I did not feel like it was like an absurd commitment. Like I felt like I could very much like integrate it within my current schedule. Now, granted, like I work my schedule, so it's not like I have a 9 to 5 where I'm set that. There were a few times where I did sweat because the calls were literally when my kids were getting on the bus in the morning. And so trying to figure out and Emily lovingly likes everybody to be on time, punctual, that's just being respectful, right? Like that's proper etiquette. And so there were times where I was like, oh my gosh. But part of it too was advocating for myself and getting my husband involved, which for many years, like I oftentimes didn't want to bother him with anything like that. But learning that my stuff is just as important as everyone else's stuff in the house. And advocating for myself. And he was like, okay, sure, yeah, like I'll hang over and get the kids off or whatever. There was even one call, like I got on the call and literally hopped on a plane 2 hours later after the call ended to leave to go out of state. So it's about prioritizing wherever your priorities are, you're going to make space for it. And it's really easy to find excuses for not being able to be on
Yeah,
the calls or not get your sessions done. And that really comes down to an internal thing.
yeah,
Every problem, there's a solution. It's just a matter of figuring out what the solution, even if it's not necessarily the solution that is the most comfortable. So.
yeah. And that is so great that you could lean on, your family for support, and your husband was able to help you in that way, and that you finally spoke up and was like, I'm doing this thing. I just need you to help me for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, I want to end on like any advice that you may have for somebody who is interested in IEA, not really sure like what path they're going to take, joining or not, or to any future students, what would any advice be for anyone joining any future cohorts?
I think the biggest thing is like again, the theme that I think I hear in this whole call is just about like the whole fear aspect is you're going to have resistance. That's just how we are built, how your subconscious is trying to keep you safe. And so I think part of it is really getting real with yourself. And if everything else except for the fear is say like a heck yes, then trust that. And everything new is always going to be hard. There's sometimes learning curves, but just hold the faith and keep moving forward. And I promise you, like the rewards on the other end are worth it. It's just about overcoming those things. And that's what life is. Like that's why we're on this journey is to learn these lessons to kind of push through this. And one thing that's coming to mind, which I've talked a lot about with Emily, is like this whole like birthing process, right? Where you're laboring and you're trying to birth this beautiful thing, but there's going to be some discomfort and some growing pains and everything else like that. Um, and I don't regret ever joining IEA and seeing it all the way through and getting that accomplishment and seeing how that I can now blend and integrate it into my practice and with my clients. So
That was really beautiful. That was great advice. Thank you for joining me, Millie. I'm really happy to hear about your story and learn more about you, and to talk IEA with you. So yeah, thank you for joining me.
yeah, thank you for having me.